Back in 2011, Michael Shuckers from St. Lawrence University would conduct an extensive draft analysis, which included a section that analyzed how many players from each draft will go on to play 200 games at the NHL level. And it's an interesting question. If you're a team that gathered draft picks, what are the odds that those players make an impact at the NHL level? Well, the answer? About 21% of all drafted players will play 200 games at the NHL level, with first round picks sitting around 35%, a steep drop off to rounds 2 and 3, and an even bigger drop off to round 4. Meaning, from the millions of aspiring kids around the globe, which leads to thousands of draft eligible prospects, where finally, 224 of those kids get the chance to be drafted. As we have seen promising prospects fizzle out at the NHL level, coveted first round picks who have never played a single NHL game. And of course, this is one sample size, but it does paint a picture on how difficult it is to be drafted, let alone step on NHL ice. And if you're asking, why 200 games? Why is that the benchmark you're showing? Well, this brings us to Paul Bissonnette. Because from 2008 until 2014, Paul Bissonnette would have a 202 NHL game career. So not only did Paul Bissonnette play more NHL games than 65% of first round picks, no, in that timeline, Paul Bissonnette, and get this, would be healthy scratched more games than the average career of 65% of first round picks, as he would finish his career with well over 200 healthy scratches, meaning he had more healthy scratches than games played in his career. Paul Bissonnette is the Wayne Gretzky of healthy scratches.
What is a press box hat trick?
3 hot dogs, and I actually had one of those this year in Minnesota.
So, the question is why? How in the hell did Biz claim this stat line? If he was being healthy scratched that often, how was he able to sustain NHL relevancy? And the answer? Well, the answer is fascinating. When you see somebody with Biz's career, you would assume that he sustained relevancy based on fighting, chucking fists. But no, that was only a small part of it. Without the NHL even realizing, Paul Bissonnette would carve out one of the most important careers in NHL history, solely based on his charisma. Biz has the Riz. Every locker room needs personalities that can not only make the room laugh, take off some of that tension, but a person that brings the team together. And back in 2012, Biz, who was healthy scratched over 50 times, would be the backbone of the dressing room. In fact, Arizona was able to establish such a strong culture that they would make an underdog run to the Western Conference Finals. Who would have thought that Paul Bissonnette, the healthy scratch god, would have a better playoff track record than Austin Matthews? Doesn't stop there. Biz would also be the pioneer of NHL social media. Regardless of how angry he made the owners, Biz would take to Twitter without a filter, which would ignite the entire social media space of hockey. Which is also why it is no surprise that Biz hosts the biggest hockey podcast in the world and is now revolutionizing NHL commentary.
Score your first goal, that's when I'll start asking you questions on the broadcast.
Oh man, you know what, Biz? You've been out of the league for so long, I don't even remember who you are anymore. All I know is you're just a commentator that used to be some AHL plug. Like, what are we talking about here?
In the past, we have seen signings and trades where from face value, it doesn't really make sense. However, the intangibles, the things you don't see, can be the most valuable asset a player can bring to your team. Back in the day, fans were clowning the Shea Weber for PK Subban trade, only for Weber to mentor a young Canadiens team to the finals. Or perhaps Ryan Reeves, who is the perfect recent example of this theory. Fans would be shocked to hear that Ryan Reeves signed with Toronto. At this point in his career, Ryan Reeves is a bottom 6 grinder. Yes, he can provide that supplementary physical game in the bottom 6, but one thing is for sure, you are not signing Reeves for his goal scoring. No, just like Paul Bissonnette, Ryan Reeves was signed for his intangibles. Add on the fact that Ryan Reeves is arguably the best fighter from this era, someone who will beat the wheels off players trying to be physical with their stars. And this brings us to the next discovery. During the pandemic season, we would see a large upswing in the number of fights per season, and it makes sense. Not only was the world in chaos, but teams were constantly matched up against the same divisional rivals, over and over again, which will without a doubt increase fighting, which it did. So it begs the question, was this a one-season fluke? Or are we actually seeing more fighting? And well, here are the results. After the NHL would see an all-time low in 2019, the NHL would rebound from the new divisions. And my god, this past season, not only was there more fights than the pandemic season, but we have been seeing constant upward progression. But why? My theory on this increased fighting is not only did the pandemic spark it back up, but I believe the NHL, hell, any professional sports team, will experience a phenomenon called population dynamics. Depending on the environment, demand for certain players will change. Because back in the 2000s, leading to the 2010s, the NHL would experience an exponential shift from grit to skill, as teams realized that those fighters in the bottom 6 who can't skate, yeah, they're probably not good anymore. This would cause teams to prioritize skill to gain that competitive advantage. Because in today's case, every team is full of skilled guys. Thus, the NHL has seen an increased demand for physical players, which would help explain the recent uptick in fighting, which helps put things into picture to why Toronto, with their cap situation, would go out and sign Ryan Reeves. But back to healthy scratches, because this next story is absurd. Back in the Ovechkin goal-scoring glory days, in his shadow was Alex Seaman, who would go on to carve out a great career in Washington, as he would even pot a career-high 40 goals in 2010. However, the Capitals would run into cap issues, and with the 2012 NHL strike, where they would let Seaman walk to free agency, where he would then get the bag from Carolina, signing a $7 million AAV for 5 years, where it would happen. Shortly after cashing in, Seaman would see massive regression in his game, going from an elite 40-goal scorer to being a defensive liability, putting up 6 goals in 57 games, which was not sitting well with head coach Kirk Muller. Thus, Seaman would be healthy scratched 25 times. But here's the thing, his $7 million contract in today's money is worth $9 million, meaning Seaman would set an NHL record for the most expensive healthy scratch season in NHL history, as he would be paid $2.75 million, or nearly $110,000 per game, to sit in the crowd. And for us Canadians, $3.6 million, as he would generate the average income of 60 Canadians while he was eating hot dogs in the stands, which would lead to the Hurricanes buying him out, where they would terminate his contract 2 years into his 5-year deal. Brutal. However, these stories don't even come close, don't even sniff Lonnie Bahanis. In a previous video, I covered the bizarre treatment of Jeremy Williams, more specifically, how he was an elite player in the AHL, and when he was finally called up, he would score in 4 straight debuts in 4 different seasons. Yet, that still wasn't good enough for Williams to be given a proper shot. Little did I know, right before Jeremy Williams joined the team, this would happen to Lonnie Bahanis. Because after going undrafted, Lonnie would grind his way to securing an AHL contract. And in the minors, Lonnie would reach another level offensively. Right off the bat, he was an elite point-per-game scorer at the AHL level. And when he did get called up, Lonnie would impress. Defensively he was lacking, but the offense pointed towards the star player. And this is where things get ridiculous. After a great AHL season, Lonnie would carry his scoring momentum into the playoffs, as he would put up 6 points in 5 games, not bad, but the Leafs would be shut down by Fredericton in 5. And get this, following this game, Lonnie would get into an altercation with then Fredericton head coach Michael Theoren, where he would be charged with assault, which Michael Theoren would drop, on top of a 9-month restraining order. And at this point, Lonnie thought his time in the NHL was done, finito. But to Lonnie's surprise, he would receive a message from the Toronto Maple Leafs. And again, at this point, Lonnie was experiencing a media storm. Assault, restraining orders. However, the Toronto Maple Leafs scored only 9 goals in the first round of the playoffs. And in Game 1 of Round 2 versus a prime Yager in the Penguins, Toronto would be shut out 2-0. Thus, the Leafs were in a dilemma. Lonnie was a dynamic offensive forward who might be able to tip the scale for Toronto. But on the other hand, he is unproven, has no NHL track record, and just beat the wheels off another coach in the league. But in a desperation move, it would happen. Toronto would call up my man Lonnie. Let's go. And get this, in his first career playoff game, Lonnie would pop off, scoring the opening goal, where he would finish with 3 points. And I kid you not, Lonnie would lead the Leafs in scoring, putting up 7 points in 5 games. And keep in mind, Pittsburgh had just dismantled the New Jersey Devils, who were on a dynasty run, only to be shut down by my man Lonnie Bahanas. However, Toronto would lose in the conference finals. But with that being said, Lonnie would lead the Leafs in point production, was sitting among the league leaders. So you might think, Lonnie must be feeling pretty good. He finally got his shot. It was a game changer. Hell, when you consider his underdog role and that he had a point per game average, you can make the argument that Lonnie was the Leafs MVP. And if they make the finals that year and win, who knows what would have happened. Yet, the next year, Lonnie received no NHL interest. In fact, after his amazing performance, he would find himself not in the AHL, but the IHL, which back then, the IHL was a light breeze away from collapsing, which it did. And at this point, Lonnie Bahanas would decide to pack his bags and play in Switzerland. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Can you name a really strange NHL career? Comment down below. Also, big announcement, new product release. I just released the new Vancouver Canucks collection box, where every box comes with a guaranteed amazing card. And with Vancouver being my team, it was so much fun to make. So if you're interested in hockey cards, check out the link below. And as always, thanks for watching.